about the birds themselves and the challenges of birding and IDing or identifying that bird. So we talked about earlier the challenges of weather and location and keeping in mind what you're going into out in the field. But let's talk about the birds themselves. What are some of the challenges that you'll experience trying to identify a bird with your checklist and with your field guides? One of them will be, depending on the time of year, you may see a bird that is resident, a year-round resident, and it's here in Florida all the time. And you may be looking for a bird that's here on a migratory or seasonal basis only because it migrates to another part of the world for half the season or half the year. So be aware that just because you're seeing a bird at this month doesn't mean you'll see it in 5 months from now. And that's learning which birds are year-round residents and which ones are migratory. And that does make a difference in learning how to identify a bird. One of the next things to realize in using your guides and your checklists is not just the species of the bird, but the sex of the bird. Many, though not all, birds have differences in the way they appear. It's called sexual dimorphism. And what that means is the males and the females may look differently from one another. They may not have the same colors or patterns on their feathers. They may have different colored eyes, different colored beaks even slightly, and a couple of other different features. You'll have to figure out the age of a bird. Sometimes a juvenile or young bird looks dramatically different from the adult version of it. And so you may be looking at a species that you're having trouble identifying, and it's actually a very young bird of a species that you can commonly recognize as an adult. There are some other challenges too. Those might be, for example, birds which are introduced to an area or which are domesticated animals that are accidentally released, or they have been dumped, or they have gotten here in some other manner. We have a species here called the Egyptian goose, and it's not native to Florida, but you will see it and you may not find it and be able to identify it, and so you may leave you scratching your head as to what it is. So keep in mind that there are species of birds which are not native to Florida, or they are domesticated species which are now out in the environment. Hybridization sometimes occurs. It occurs heavily with gulls. So sometimes species will hybridize with one another. There are duck species which do it and gull species which we know to do it. And so that's going to be one of the lesser challenges that you'll gain up front, but be aware of it. No, nonetheless, because it may impact you in IDing birds a little later on. Lastly, don't be overwhelmed. Identification of a bird is supposed to be fun and not too much of an exacting challenge. You'll begin to grow comfortable as you see more and more species of birds, and you'll gain your confidence. Rome wasn't built in a day, so identifying of birds was not something that you'll be able to pick up in a day. Give yourself time, enjoy what you're doing, and don't rush. The ID will come to you. Getting started with birding is not too difficult, but when you're out there in the field, as it were, we often think of birds as being in the sky only. And that's great for when birds are migrating seasonally, but that's not the only place that they are. For example, water. Water is an attractant like nothing else. If you are in an area where there is water, even like this small tiny canal that's off of the St. Lucie River, then check the water. You'll want to check in the water and watch for movement, because there are species like the anhinga, which dives under the water and fishes. You'll want to check on the water for species like ducks and grebes. And then, of course, along the bank of this canal, of this area, you'll see birds running along that and fishing in the shallows. Another place that folks forget to think about is ground level. Here, right down in here, for example, you may miss the ground dove, bobwhite quail, the ovenbird, and a lot of other species which are commonly on the ground, and that if you can see their movement and catch sight of them, this is where they're going to be. You won't find them up in the trees, you'll find them at the ground level. That takes us to mid-story. What do we mean by mid-story? So not ground level, but halfway up. Mid-story birds, like the Carolina wren, typically stay a little higher than the shrub, so to speak. So they're not necessarily at the tree tops, but they're at a mid-level between the tree top and the tree base. So always scan and look for movement at what we call mid-story. And that means, of course, tree tops are also another place to look. Raptors tend to go to the treetops, and they do this because they get the best view of all of the hunting ground that they're observing. So treetops are definitely a spot to check as well, because a lot of larger birds are more easily spotted up in those treetops. But of course, you get the small, tiny, fast-moving, challenging birds that will go up in the treetops, typically wood warblers as well. And that brings us, of course, to the one we all know, and that's the sky. So the sky will give us a pretty clear and good view. Your challenges, of course, will be sunlight, clouding, rain if it's present, and wind. All of those things can impact birding, but don't forget to look at all of these layers. In looking for birds, one great place to start, if you have them, is a tree snag, like this one. It'll help you orient and use your binoculars, and it'll also help you see and learn about birds instead of trying to find them in the deep foliage of an oak tree. But seriously, these tree snags are wonderful. Tree snag is a dead tree or shrub that's denuded of foliage, and it's a perfect spot for birds to roost and to perch and wait in lying in wait for prey. This is a great spot to look for raptors. A tree snag like this will attract woodpeckers as well, and small flocks of birds such as grackles perhaps. And so using what's around you, using some of the natural features, will help you to locate birds. And the reason why utilizing things like this are great is that as you're learning to bird, make sure that you see as many things as you can in the field, and maybe jot down some quick notes in a journal that you take with you, and then go to your field guide and use your checklist and try to identify what you have. Many times people will take a great deal of time in field to go through field guides when the birds that are around them have already gone. Don't waste that opportunity. Don't let it go through your fingertips. See as much as you can. Try to make some notes once the birds have moved on, and then take time later to consult your checklist and your field guide. That is often a very helpful thing that many people do, because it helps them to see what's in the field right in front of them instead of losing the opportunity trying to grapple with a field guide. I think I hear a northern parula, so we'll get some experience while we're out here doing Birding 101 to actually locate that parula. I'm seeing some movement up here at the edge of this tree. Using movement in the edges and the tops of trees will often give away a bird's location, because remember, you're many times going to hear them first before you ever see them. So looking for the movement and listening for them will help you figure out where to train your binoculars. So I'm seeing some movement right in here, and I'm going to raise my binoculars and have a look, see what I can find. So I'm looking for the movements, the fine movements at the end of the tree here, and I found the northern parula. A small bird, it's about this big, it's on the edge, but a little bit of movement and being able to efficiently move my binoculars up and follow the tree and the branch line right to its location. One of the interesting things about birding is, of course, how we locate the birds, whether that's audio by ear or visually through our eyes. Many birders who have a great deal of experience and have been birding for many years will tell you that they do it both ways, and that often they learn the sound of a bird before they ever got to see it. And I have to tell you, that's the way I learned how to identify several birds. I saw them after I learned what their sounds, vocalizations had sounded like. In the advent of the age of information, where we can look and find great audio files and beautiful illustrations and photographs of birds, it makes it easier for you to learn those sounds and identify which sound goes with which bird. But using your ear and listening for birds, and then also watching for them together, will give you a really rich experience. So don't hesitate to do both. Rely on both your ears and your eyes, and then look for the movements in the trees and on the ground around you. Let's try an exercise to get you an idea of how you should look and listen. So pretend that we're in your backyard or one of your favorite places. We're here in this beautiful hammock area. This is a hardwood mixed woods with palm trees, oak trees, and some other trees. It's a beautiful wooded area. It's perfect for birds. And we also are in a riparian area that is going to show us water birds such as wading birds and ducks. But one thing that you can do in any habitat that you visit to go and birding in is a little short exercise, and I want to teach it to you so that you can use it as well. When you arrive on site and you have all your equipment and you're ready to go and you're in that habitat, find a spot, much like this one if you like, and then do this exercise. I'd like you to close your eyes for 10 seconds and simply listen. Open your eyes. In those 10 seconds, you are listening for as many different bird voices as you can hear. It doesn't matter how loud they are necessarily. If they're quiet, train your hearing in on them. Hopefully, you'll start to learn to listen for the voices of birds. In other words, not just their volume, but the different species and how they sound. You may hear 2 or 3 of the same species, or you may hear 2 or 3 different species. And that will help orient you and give you an alert as to what you'll be finding and listening for and looking for when you're in a habitat. So in summary, for Birding 101, we have a couple of summarized tips for you. And the first would be stay local, don't carry too much equipment, don't allow yourself to get frustrated or overwhelmed. The birding identification skills will come. You'll just need to practice and get out there in the field. So easy as you go, stay local, take only what you need to, and go light. And by all means, enjoy the birds.